advise with them on that. That's the thing we have to get ready for every year, get ready for the hurricane season. And we have to um, show that we protect our families, ourselves, and our properties, and so forth. And so just be ready, and listen to the advisories given, the weather advisories. And of course, as soon as you are advised, take the necessary precautionary measures to look after yourself and your family. Let's take it easy to party leader who is in studio now. Party leader.
Good evening to everyone, and just joining the party, having a bit of some things to take care of there, but happy to be here, and I look forward to a good show and welcome all the listeners. I know they listen patiently every week to hear us, and we're just happy to be here to be spreading the words. Freedom, is here to renew the nation, and that's part of our series, and we continue that tonight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have Alvin on, and let us say hello, Alvin. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Bosso, and good evening to Party Leader Bernard. Again, let me also add my welcome to our listeners and the many friends and well-wishers, supporters of the party. Thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure to be able to participate in the discussion, dialogue tonight, and I look forward to a very fruitful discussion.
Yes. How is your family, Alvin, in Atlanta? How are your family?
Everybody's fine. Atlanta, I was saying to Ashton earlier, just before you came on, that we are hovering into the 90s, upper 80 and 90-degree temperature, so it's pretty hot. It's normally referred to as hot Atlanta. So it's really hot this summer. But other than that, everybody's doing fine, and we're doing great. When it's hot, we should accept it. When it's cold, we complain. So when will we not complain? But other than that, we're doing fine. Everybody's doing fine.
Yes. Well, earlier on, I mentioned Curtis Augustus, who is a trade unionist like yourself, and once a union leader remains always a trade unionist. I guess I don't know if I have it right, Alvin.
You got it right. With some exceptions, I won't call name tonight. I'll plead the fifth.
So I mentioned Curtis and his, being at the hospital, and I was there twice today in the morning, and I'm late about after 5. And as I said, when I went in the morning, he was lying there sleeping, and the wife, called him and tried to wake him up. He wake up and shake a bit. He moved his right leg and right arm, but did not speak. Well, by the time I left, when I came back in the afternoon, he was a little, I would say a little more in terms of moving the arm and the leg than I saw in the morning. So we just pray to God that he has a full recovery. Alvin. I also mentioned the passing of Patrick John. Himself was the Prime Minister and the trade unionist. And so I don't know if you, as a former General Secretary of the CSA, which it was called at the time, if you have anything you want to just quickly, before we go into the meat of our discussion, want to...
Yeah, well, I too would like to extend best wishes to Curtis and hope he can have a full recovery. Curtis and I go way, way back. Involved in the trade union movement, and even while he was Secretary General at the CCL, Caribbean Congress of Labor. That was one place I visited quite often. We had several workshop seminars in Barbados and throughout the rest of the region. And so Curtis and I have that connection. We go back. And of course, most folks may not know that Curtis' wife, Lyris, is also my cousin. We're cousins. Lyris' father's mother, and my grandmother, 2 sisters. So my grandmother was Lyris' father's aunt. So we have a little connection there. So I wish him well. And of course, Patrick John is also a family friend as well. As you know, my uncle Ted Daly is married to Patrick's daughter, Ephilia. So Patrick is someone that has been associated with the family, so on both fronts, and as a trade unionist as well. So my condolences extended to Desiree, the wife, and the extended family. In Ephilia, if she's listening tonight, in St. Croix, and Ted, and all the grandchildren, our condolences are extended to them. So.
Mhm. Okay. So, if you want to stay. Yes, well, population, you want to add your views to this?
Yes, certainly. Curtis is not only a stalwart of the movement, but he's been a stalwart of the Freedom Party, and we were very, 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 very shocked and saddened at the news of his illness. But as you said, he's looking well. He's looking stable, and so we look forward to positive things. And of course, we'll be there for him. We'll be there with him. But again, it illustrates just how much we must show appreciation to those around us as these things happen so quickly. And so, Curtis, you may not be hearing us now, but I know you know that we're with you, and we wish you the very best, and we will be there with you through this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to say good night to those listening to us on the Facebook page and, of course, on YouTube, and those of you listening as well via the radio. So we have a wide listenership tonight, and that is very good. So we ought for a good program. I mentioned in your absent party leader the town hall meeting we had last night, and the connection, the contact that we're building with the Dominicans in Dominica, and of course Dominicans abroad.
Yes, absolutely. I was a little distracted getting something set up on Facebook, but absolutely, we had I thought a very energetic meeting, a very interesting meeting. We got some very thought-provoking questions that stretched our imagination and stretched our thinking about our strategy. And the folks, they were enthusiastic about the vision that we shared and the possibilities that we really believe the possibility exists to see a transformed island, a transformed nation. And people were excited about that. We also got an opportunity to share some real data with them on growth rates and economic development and how our economy has stagnated. And I think people were pleased to see those numbers, because the data is there, and it reflected sort of the issues that were being risen abstractly. It kind of made it a little more concrete, and very, very good discussion. And we look forward to doing that. We'll do that on a regular basis every few weeks, and we'll keep touching base with the Dominican populace, and building that sort of gathering together under that umbrella of a vision. And so it was really good to get that off rolling. First inaugural attempt at this, and we only build it on that momentum.
Yes. Well, we're still in the COVID, times. I mean, it's what it is now. More than a year, of course, going into 2 years since we are, seriously affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank God that we in Dominica have done our very best so far to manage the COVID. The government has showed some leadership in that area, the Ministry of Health, the Minister of Health. The Dominican people from all walks of life have cooperated and done what needed to have been done in order to fight together to prevent the COVID pandemic from taking over our country. So far we have done a good job, but we still have to press on, and we have to do our very best to continue to work together to obey and implement the protocol in our own personal operation and that at various public institutions. And we can't be too comfortable and let our guards down because, I mean, you hear what is happening in St. Vincent, in St. Kitts, sorry. They was one of the countries that was seen as a COVID-free Caribbean country.
Yes, yes.
And in a twinkle of an eye, with one person, as I understood, came in and the thing spread like wildfire. I understand one or two persons will have passed as a result
Yes.
of the COVID, and it has really struck them, although they were going very well in terms of how they managed the COVID-19. We're hearing now in St. Lucia, but they've had, I think yesterday they had about 20 something, 26 or 28 new cases. So the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, he addressed the nation to announce the date for election, which is July 26th. And he was saying one of his biggest fear was the COVID.
Yes.
And the fact that at this kind of activity, the election season, people are hooked up and they're in the parties, in the rallies, in the meetings around and in the motorcade and so forth. Social distancing at that time almost disappeared.
Right.
And he was a bit fearful of that. But I want to wish them well and in their campaign and to wish them success at the poll. So I say this to say that we here in Dominica must take heed of those things and continue to cooperate and play our part to keep the COVID off of our country. We have had some cases, thank God they have been, treated and healed, but we do not want any death or to have this COVID thing, escalating because, it can cause a lot of difficulty, particularly for health services.
Yes, absolutely. I think this illustrates that we must remain vigilant, right? This thing ebbs and flows, and this thing mutates, and in fact, there are new strains being talked about. So we must keep vigilant. I think this is simply the new normal, right? To be on guard for such violent activity and pandemic possibilities. And I think this is just the way it's going to be for quite some time. I think we would be a bit irresponsible to simply get tired of doing the right things and slip back into complacency. And that's what we see happening in a few places. So we have to keep our guard up. Dominica has done extremely well, very well. And we need to keep doing what we do. And I think the new normal in Dominica is to wear a mask and to do the protocols, and folks have adjusted to it like we do to everything else in life. And I think we need to keep that going. We wish St. Vincent well. We want to see them back on the road to containment and to have this thing under control. And
St. Kitts.
So St. Kitts, I'm sorry. And we want to be looking out for that. But a good lesson learned for us to be vigilant in our own efforts.
Yes. Alvin, I'm sure you have something on this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I would also echo is what I think Bernard had just echoed, is that Dominica has done fairly well in terms of its own management of the COVID pandemic. I think at one point, I'm sure as to in terms of what direction that would take. But I think as a country, we've done very well in Dominica. Best to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any deaths as a result. And that, as you rightly pointed out, even where we had one or two cases, we were able to manage that. But having said that, we can't drop our guards down because it's a virus that spreads very rapidly. And should we do that, we just open up ourselves for further problems. So we just have to remain vigilant. That's what we got to do. Continue with whatever the best practices that has been in place, the various protocols. I know it's kind of inconvenience for a number of us, a number of people. Folks are pretty much tired of wearing masks or tired of doing certain things. But I think by now, for some of us, it has come second nature. So we just need to continue in that direction and hopefully hope for the best. So hopefully soon we can all travel as we want and socialize and recreate and do all the different things that we would love to do as family and friends.
Yes, well, before we go into our main topic here, which is the unhealthy state of governance in Dominica, and we have a number of points, the bullet points, to make reference to, and that is fiscal responsibility bill, which was about to be introduced in Parliament a couple of weeks ago. Then we have the situation at the Dominica State College. We saw that they had to come out to get something done. The bus drivers and bus owners had to come out to get some attention, get something done. You have the building of an international airport, the way in which it is being, handled, and it's like somebody private business, and the country is not involved in a real serious way. And when this kind of bad behavior come to the fore, you find it is politics is being used to hide whatever they want to hide, and this is why during the bogus signing ceremony, people were asked to come dressed in red. So rather than making it a public event, it now become a partisan event. Now you had the Wesley truckers had to protest to get something out of the activity that is taking place in their area. When the question of law and order in our country, the ongoing saga involving Choksi, electoral reform, engagement of Sir Byron, and then many other things that we can reference to, but tonight we'll see how we can do justice to all of what I have raised here. But before we go ahead, the news coming out of Haiti today was a very, sad one, touching news that your president and your wife and your home have been, assassinated. And I was trying to see where else in the Caribbean we had the prime minister or president being assassinated, and I couldn't find anywhere. And so it seems that's the first for us. And what I'm getting there is that it is I don't want to preempt, but it is something that was properly organized, properly orchestrated. I hope that is not the case, but to have entered, and people asking questions, to have entered the home where you had securities and guards and all of that, and the president dead on the spot, and the wife died a couple hours later. It's something that we as Caribbean people have to think about, and knowing that we have a number of Haitians here too, I don't know how they themselves are viewing this, but it's something that we have to take seriously.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a horrible event. Not, it's a very, very sad event for the family of the president, and just around it. It's also a very sad event for the state, where you can have that sort of breakdown in the rule of law, that sort of breakdown in the institutional structure. It's just that's sort of the lowest point you can get in terms of how you operate a country. And so we'll wait for the facts to come out. There's speculations on who may be behind this. We'll wait for the facts to come out to talk further on this. But I absolutely agree with you also that as a Caribbean region, as a Caribbean people, we have to address this. We have to speak out on this issue and take whatever action we can directed at those who were responsible and hold them accountable in whatever way that's within our means to ensure that no benefits come out of this out of this tragedy, out of this real upheaval in the city. So let's see how that comes together. But I think the key thing was said that we have to figure out as a Caribbean people how to respond to this, and hopefully we extend our sympathies and our solidarity for our Haitian brothers who are here underground. And maybe there will be some sort of meeting and discussion that, and we will certainly participate in that and listen to the positions of those on the ground, Haitians on the ground, and however we as a party can be of help and of assistance, or even if people listening here, or therapeutic there, then we'll be there.
Mhm. Yes, well, the topic that I've mentioned, the unhealthy state of our economy, of governance in our country, and I've raised all of these points there, which is quite a lot, but there are a lot more we can add over here. In fact, if you to take you a whole month or more to discuss how things are being done in this country to the disadvantage of citizens and the growth and development of our people and country. Now, a couple of weeks ago, about I think 2 Mondays or so ago, 2 Mondays ago, we just in the night, the Sunday night, this thing got circulated around that the government is going to Parliament to pass a bill, to debate a bill and make it law to freeze the salaries of public officers to up to about 14 years, 2% and 1%, given the activity of the economy and so forth. And I mean, it was so sad that this was going to Parliament and not even the agency that represent the public officers knew about it. They have pulled it back, but these guys, how they behave, they pull back for a little while and see what we do to come back and so forth. But anything that is bad should never come back. Anything that is not good and in the interest of citizens and the interest of the country, whether you're a government or not, it should not come back. Bad things should be thrown out or burnt to not come back. And Alvin, as a former General Secretary of the CSC and one who worked in the public service in many capacities, you may want to take the lead on that. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I agree with you entirely, Bosco. I share those sentiments that you've expressed. Let me just start off by saying, though, that in essence, I don't think any one of us here or those listening would be averse to fiscal responsibility. Any good government, good governance requires a certain level of fiscal responsibility. Having said that, however, I think it's not necessarily what is done, but how it is done. And I believe myself, when I learned of the manner in which the government had intended to move forward with this particular legislation, this act, clearly what comes to mind is a question of intent. What was that intent? And one of the fundamental principles in dealing with the union that represent the interests of public officers is good faith. Whatever you do or say must be done with a certain level of good faith on both sides. So you go into a discussion, a conversation. That is what guided me and my actions and that of the union. So it seems to me that if the government, the manner in which the government had intended to move forward with that clearly demonstrates bad intent, bad faith on their part. And I think what is even more appalling is the fact that what I learned from discussion with the General Secretary of the PSU, Brother Later, was that after the whole thing was revealed, the very same morning, somewhere a little after 8 o'clock, while Brother Later and his executive was in meeting, the Secretary to the Cabinet is calling somewhere after 8 o'clock and inviting the union to a meeting. I mean, clearly, that does not in any way augur any measures of good faith. So I think that is troubling, very troubling. There is what is referred to as a Public Service Act that governs and guides the relationships between the public service and the union. And when I look through that particular Fiscal Responsibility Act, there are various sections in there. Time may not permit us to go in detail this evening, but there are various sections in there that contradict quite a few of the provisions of the Public Service Act. So, like you've said, it is a bad act. It's not good. And my own advice to the union is not to engage in any shape or form any discussion on that act. I will add further, and as I said earlier, the question of fiscal responsibility is something that should be encouraged. But it was the very same Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, I recalled, and both yourself and Party Leader Bernard may have heard, couple months ago, was claiming how well the economy was doing, how buoyant they were, to the extent that government was no longer making payments to merchants through LPOs, but direct cash. They were paying for services and supplies rendered to government by cash, as we would say, l'argent cherche. I mean, I cringed when I heard that, because my own career in the public service started in the audit department, where I worked with folks like Ozzy Lewis, Director of Audit, Gorman, deceased Gorman Robin, deceased Sybil Baron, and a number of other folks. And this is something that would be unheard of, for a Minister of Finance to be bragging that they make payments with cash. So again, if we're talking fiscal responsibility, the question remains, is that fiscal responsibility? And as I said, we could, there are several other areas that can be highlighted. So what I will end by saying is that I think public officers should be on guard, and not just public officers though. Let me also phrase it to say that the act in itself, although it may have a direct impact on public officers, but it has some consequential impact as well on the wider working people in Dominica. Because as you know, public officers play a very critical role, but they're not in isolation. So while it may, in a very direct way, be at public officers, I think in some way it would in fact impact workers in the various other sectors, particularly in quasi-government departments. You talk about Dawasco, Social Security, Aid Bank, and a number of other areas. So we're in very troubling time, I must say, from the reports and what I've been able to glean from where am I in Atlanta. We're in very troubling time. And it's time that requires conscience. I think it requires the conscience of many of us who stood up for certain principled behavior to now stand up and speak, and to call it out for what it is. So I'll end on that for now, and we'll come in a little later and say a little.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you. What did you do?
Yes, I think Alvin covered it very well in terms of the public trust, the public the relationship between the public service and the government and the public service union. Very, very well stated. I mean, it is very, very important for an effective state to have a public service that is professional, that is competent, but also motivated, right? Motivated to do the right thing for the country because that they chose that path to serve the country, but also because they're treated well and decently and respectfully. And there's a certain level of respect, a certain level of decorum that allow people dignity in their jobs. And dignity, as is well known, is one of the key aspects of doing a good job, of being motivated to come in the morning and do a good job for your country, because it is a position of dignity and respect. And when the government acts in a way that strips away that dignity, or attempts to strip away that dignity, or diminish that dignity, then they're doing a great disservice to the country. And as Alvin said, of course, we believe in fiscal responsibility. The Freedom Party is a party that promotes fiscal responsibility, fiscal conservatism. But that there has to be a balance. I mean, we can't simply say, well, we will squeeze the public servants, and they will be the ones who will bear the brunt of this fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility needs to be broad-based for our society. If we're going to have fiscal responsibility, then the government has to be more creative in ways of reducing costs, getting more efficient, getting more effective at what they do at lower cost, using technology to lower cost. All of those things are fiscal responsibilities. So it is, in my mind, it's a lack of imagination to make the first attempt at cost savings be upon the backs of the civil servants who work diligently day in and day out. And as I said, the cost to that is not only a fiscal cost, but it's a psychic cost in terms of lowering the dignity of public servants and lowering then their productivity and motivation to come in there and to do the jobs effectively. The net result might well be a loss of efficiency, which means that the cost savings that you hope for are not realized, because now things are getting done less efficiently, and cost to the country arise because time is money, and having to redo things is money. And so it's just, in my mind, a bit short-sighted. And we also have to ask ourselves, what happens to all the monies that are supposed to be coming into the country? And a responsible way to invest that money, but also a responsible way to have the wages of all increase, rather than a small segment at the top, very top of the political leadership and friends who benefit from the funds that are allegedly floating around in Dominica. And so it's, for me, it's a very cynical thing to do in the environment where we're asking for billions of dollars that are accounted for. It's a cynical thing to do in that environment, to then find every way to squeeze the public servants into this very stringent set of expectations in terms of salary increases and so on. So there's cynicism there, there's lack of respect there, and I think there is just a short lack of imagination in going to that route to save money in the government.
Yes, as you rightly said, party leader, I mean, the public servants are very important. Public service for any country, very important. These are people who are coming in there as professionals, and some have grown in their jobs, some have gone out and qualified themselves and returned to work. So their profession has to be respected, and the space to operate has to be available to them without they having to do things against their conscience just to please a politician or to please a leader or to please a cabinet. Because government comes and goes, but the public service remains. And a behavior like that is what I can get out of that. Added to what you and Alvin have said, is that the government does not really appreciate the commitment, the service, the contribution, whatever you call it, of the public officers. And therefore, if you talk of fiscal responsibility, we have seen that in the 80s under the Freedom Party.
Yes.
We have seen that. That was what it was. People even saying Mama was tight. But Mama said every cent that come into the country for the country must be spent for the country. It belongs to the country. And she said that, while the Prime Minister is saying about fiscal responsibility and want to make us, in fact, want to talk as if he can lead us on fiscal responsibility, I think he probably mistaken. It's fiscal irresponsibility.
Yes.
Because I mean, you see the Prime Minister, for example, who's just living in her own house for 15 years as
Right.
Prime Minister.
That's
And
correct.
she never paid herself rent. That is fiscal responsibility.
Absolutely.
But you live in your house or in your friend's house, in your good partner house.
Right.
I mean,
It's $60,000 a month.
$60,000 a month.
Yes.
Okay, and then all of these other things, all of these giving there and picking and choosing to give and so forth.
Right.
I mean, you don't call it fiscal responsibility. You rightly said, I mean, you have government vehicles, government gas. Can you imagine, they owe millions of dollars to gas stations?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Millions of dollars to gas station. How can you be a responsible government and demonstrate a healthy state of governance if that is your attitude and you want to come to talk to people now about fiscal responsibility? You ought to be ashamed.
I agree. It's just a cynical move. It's one of the most cynical moves I've seen this government do, and they've done lots of cynical moves. But this one about touting the fiscal responsibility of the current DLP administration, it's ridiculous. When everyone who gets so asked to run, simply to run for a seat, receive tens of thousands of dollars to run. I mean, the behavior of the current Labour Party, you do not see fiscal responsibility in the DNA, nor do you see that translated into the way they run government. And so, as you rightly said, if anything, the current administration is known for is fiscal irresponsibility. Every project seems to cost twice as much as it should. And we don't quite know how much they really do cost because there's no accountability or transparency. And so in every aspect, if you look at it in a holistic way, there's just fiscal irresponsibility manifests itself at every turn. And then to say, well, we will be fiscally irresponsible, but you, the core, the hardworking civil service, you shall be, we shall put the fiscal responsibility upon you. So really, it's a cynical move. It's meant to be a marketing move to tell people we're fiscally responsible, but in reality, this government is not at all fiscally responsible.
Absolutely. I agree entirely. And not only that, I mean, if we take, for example, I know it's not on our topic here, but if we take this big elephant in the room, which is the CBI program, I mean, we see how that CBI program is being managed. The question is, has there been fiscal responsibility in terms of the funds derived from the CBI program? Can the government tell us clearly and give us a detailed reporting in terms of how much monies were collected, how those monies were spent, and so this is where I believe it begins. This seems to be their major source of revenue for the country, the CBI program. How responsible are they as a government in terms of the management and operation of the CBI program? So you're right. I agree entirely with the views expressed by both yourself, Bosso, and party leader Bernard. I mean, this and I again say is the intent. What was your intention? To not have absolutely no discussion with the union, no consultation, not even a meeting, and then to think that you can go into Parliament that morning and pass that legislation. Clearly, there was some malicious intent in wanting to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, under the caption of unhealthy state, we have we saw the college tutors and college lecturers. We saw they had to take to protest. We supported the move because we felt that something needed to be done with our primary tertiary institution. And therefore, we could not sit by and say, okay, it's okay, fine. No, it's not fine. And the point is, even if you got a few things done as a result of what you did in terms of taking to the attention of the general public, and the government that seems to be absent in things like that. They're not present, they're absent. It's like a person can be there and their mind not there. So the government mind is not there. So you take it to their mind that things have to be done major tertiary education institution, and you get a few things done. There's even person that the president now operated for several months without a board.
Right.
I mean, how you can be a president of a college? You have worked in other universities, other places, and you know how things operate, and you feel Dominica must be different. It's a Vibagai kind of operation. I mean, what kind of value you even transmit to the students that you're teaching? So there's a point to make there before you come back to it is that the people should not just relax because a few things were done. Because a country's development calls for continuity. You have to be engaged as not a viewer, a spectator. You have to be engaged as a participant in your development. And you're not doing that because you dislike the government or you like the government. You're doing it because you love your country.
Absolutely.
You can't put your country above, put government and party above your country. When government do wrong thing, people stood up to Eugenia, they stood up to Patrick John, they stood up to Edison James, Rosie Douglas, Pierre Charles, Edison, I call it Edison James, and so forth. All of these people stood up to them, Oliver Seraphim. And all of a sudden, you want to hide in a bag, a paper bag, to express your views. That doesn't augur well for a country that wants to make progress.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right on the money on this. And I think you use a phrase that's very relevant and probably a phrase we need to build upon. The government's mind is not there. At least their mind is not there on the right issues. They're always behind the ball on the right issues. The Dominica State College, which is a primary, as you said, tertiary education organization and institution, upon which we can build the capabilities and the skill sets that we need to develop, to run a developing country and build into a first world country. And the government's mind is not there. It's not on the understanding of our human capital. And when the issues that affect the bus drivers and the escalating cost of energy, escalating cost of fuel on the island, the government mind is simply not there until it's brought to their attention. So where are their minds? And so, as we said in several discussions, there's some misaligned incentives. The government simply does not have the right incentives for their mind to be on the right things. Their minds are elsewhere, figuring out other ways, maybe to, as has been alleged many times, to win votes, to maybe gain economic prosperity for certain of the folks involved in leadership. All these things have been alleged, and one must say, well, if the mind is not there, then yeah, maybe it's elsewhere has been alleged. And so that is a critical thing that we must continue to keep the government fit to the fire. Apparently, the government's mind is not there where it should be. Then, as you said, also the Dominican people have to constantly fill in the gap. We have to pick up the reins. We have to say, put your mind back where it needs to be, and if that means protest actions, and then that's necessary. That's a responsible thing we're doing as citizens of our country, is to keep the government's mind on the work of the people, and that is absolutely what's been happening. And as you said, we can't let up because clearly the government's mind is not there. So if we let up, then they'll go right back to being absent-minded about this very important development issue. So we must, as you said, keep the government focused on the right things.
Mm-hmm. And
well, I think that if I may just briefly say, I think it's not just their mind is not there, I think this government has developed a very callous approach, a very callous and disrespectful approach to the citizens of Dominica. Because there is an act of parliament, it's Act number 4 of 2002, that establishes the college. And there are certain provisions in that act that stipulates clearly how the college should be managed. One such provision requires the appointment of a bursar. Section 38 of the act says the board shall submit to the minister. It doesn't say may, shall submit to the minister within 3 months at the end of each academic year, or within such further times as the minister may consider reasonable, a report on the activities of the college during that academic year and a development plan for the new academic year. So here we have legislations that outlines clearly how certain institutions should operate. And the government, through the other machinery, feels callously we don't need to have a board. The board, we don't need to have a bursar. We don't need to operate this way. And time again, you see that. We have, for example, the Act 21 of 2012, which is the Integrity in Public Office. That act as a callous approach. This committee has not met in how many years now? Again, this is an act of parliament that states clearly how certain things should be conducted, but the government has adopted this callous approach. So I think it's not just a question of their minds out there, it's a whole question of disrespect, the lack of governance, and I think we get to that stage now where the Freedom Party has to do whatever it takes to bring back into governance the way in which this country should run. Because right now this country is running, I'm not even sure to use the word running. Vai. No law, no act. I mean, whether an act exists or not, it does make a difference.
Well, the government has long ago concluded that it is no longer needs to be responsible to the Dominican people. It simply does not feel a sense of accountability. I mean, it's obvious that they might pretend to keep the semblance of that alive, but in reality, we know that this current administration does not feel accountable to the Dominican people. There are several reasons for that. One is they have found a way to raise funds independent of the taxes and the discussions that are necessary within the country to grow the economy and how the taxes should be set and so forth. That will involve a wide segment of the population. They no longer have to engage in this. They simply sell passports, and so they have an independent source of funds, and so they feel no accountability to the people in terms of having discussions of growing economy and taxation rates and so on, so that there is some balance and accountability. The second thing is, while they have grown such a loyal base of who no longer think about the country but think about the party, and so the party has ascended above the government, and so now it's the party's loyalty and the party's fan base is sufficient, they believe, to keep them in power, and so they no longer, as a government, feel a responsibility to the Dominican community. And so when you have that scenario where you have an independent source of funds and you have a party base that will support you regardless of the issue based on party loyalty rather than state loyalty or national loyalty, then you have a very toxic mix where you have a government who may try to maintain the semblance of accountability, but in reality scoffs at the idea.
Yes, in fact, Alvin made the point that the board, which is in the Act, has to present a report to the Minister of Education. Now, I know in the past you had ministers of education, like the late Henkel Christian, you had, even before I was involved in this thing, I heard of W. Stevens, and you had Charles Minard, you had
Rupert Sorrento,
you had Henry George, and these persons who served as ministers of education. And even I would say Ron Green, who was not in the Freedom government, but in the UWP government, and served as minister of education. And you saw some standards. We have a minister of education now, and I mean, really, when you listen to her, you wonder what ministry of education is she heading. The last time she was speaking and could not pronounce a word, and several attempts at it could not. Yeah. And she blamed the sun.
Yes.
When the sun goes down, she has an impediment in speech.
Yes.
and I said that
very strange anomaly.
Right, and I said to myself, I mean, each time the sun goes up or down, donkey sun goes down, when it goes down.
Yes.
When it goes down.
Each time sun goes down.
As each impediments of surfaces.
Not only on her, and it reflect on the leadership
Right.
and the management of education, which is a very important ministry in the government, and so forth. And that's our Ministry of Education in 2021.
And that was shot right on the heels of the Pampalam
This disaster.
Yes.
And I was saying to somebody who is a strong labor right, but when you look at Catherine Daniel, I'm disappointed in Catherine Daniel, to be honest, disappointed in her. But, and you made the point that, I remember when people like Brian Aline and these people ran for election, people ask them, they discuss with their family and they come forward.
Right.
Now these guys, they don't discuss with families. Once they hear a couple dollars is talking, they're ready to run. So they cannot fight for constituencies.
True.
Like you see in the United States, when they have a bill, they tell you this bill is coming forward, consult your member of parliament for the area. So you are engaged. They don't do that. Right. The only time they do the constituency is when election is around and they want us to favor us to get back there. Right. Now look at a simple example of poor governance. The Ministry of Sports is scrutiny. Right. They need more professionals there. They need more resources there. They need a wider space to operate and to administer sports and build sports around the country. What they do, they have a big ceremony in the Windsor Park because why? Melissa Popon-Skerrit is launching basketball. So they have a big ceremony. So the Prime Minister's wife and what I was going to use a timber, leave it alone. And the member of Central is bigger and more robust than the Ministry of Sports.
Well, she is apparently the new Minister of Sports in the Rosa.
Yes, so that tells you that this country can't run like that.
That's right.
Not only you love your government so much. You know, today a man was talking to a young lady, and she was saying to him that, I mean, she don't have to go to the Prime Minister for a cylinder of gas or for this, and you go to a government if you require some help in certain things, like a scholarship to one study, fine. You seek, support there. You're building a home and you have some difficulties in finishing. You can go and see if you get some help from there. But the way it is as if, well, if you want a pound of rice, you have to go to him. And she was saying the Prime Minister should be creating job. The man was there having an argument with the young lady, Yeah. And when he saw me appear there, he changed his tune. Mm-hmm. He told her, he didn't demand his UWP. I told her, I'm UWP, but hear how I'm talking. So I said, so then he said, look, Boston, come there. So ask him. I said, let me tell you something. Nobody in their good conscience can defend Skerrit and those things when the young lady said it did not create job. You can't defend that.
Absolutely.
You cannot.
That's a fact.
Yes. If Skerrit give you an apartment and you want to defend that, fine, but you cannot defend when the young lady. And what I find is happening, particularly in Alvin, a lot of young people are waking up. And they're seeing the reality of a country, because a child who's 20 years now, 21 years now, 24, all they know is the Labour Party, and most of it is just Girl Scout. Yes, and my son is 21, he only know who this government, yes, and so forth. And if you're not alert, you got carried away by bling. By bling, yes.
Right.
Absolutely. And you're right about the young people. I speak to so many of them now, and they tell me brilliantly. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a young lady. He said, "Listen, my parents are liberals. That's all I know. But this is not working, and I want to work with you guys. I want to work with you guys because I believe our country can do a lot better. I believe as young people, as educated young women working in a master's degree, says, folks like me simply cannot take this anymore. And though I grew up in a labor household, I am looking for options. And there are lots of young people out there who's looking for an option, who are fed up, who see no possibility of progress. They see no future for themselves in the island, and that makes them sad. That makes them heartbroken to have to leave your island in every respect. And that they see no future there, and they want to change it. And they're activists. And there's a young crop of activists rising in Dominica now who's determined to change this country, and they're looking to the Freedom Party with its right values and leadership. And so, absolutely, the young people are waking up to this.
Yes.
Well, like in any society, young people are the engine of growth. I mean, Bosso can speak more directly to that as former YFM.
I'm no longer young, Alvin. I'm no longer young.
You hearing me?
Yes, I say I'm no longer young.
I know, but seriously, I mean, you remember those days?
Young ladies, so
yeah. You remember those good old YFM days? Mm-hmm. I mean, Bosso, that was what carried the Freedom Party. I mean, you had the Ozzy Walsh and the Francis, Kelvin and the whole gang, So clearly, we cannot underestimate the involvement of young people in politics and the role that they can play. And like you, party leader, I agree. Young people are looking for an avenue. And I believe the Freedom Party can once again provide that avenue for them. I think it was Senior Bush, I believe, in one of the elections that he had, and he posed the question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And I think that's the question we have to put to young people. Are you better off now than you were 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago? And if that answer, if you cannot answer with a resounding yes as a young person, then clearly we have to do something to change that.
Absolutely. I think you're right about this. I mean, this is the key question: are you better off? And not just young people. I think we need to ask every sector of society and every Dominican: are you better off than you were 10 years ago? I mean, what has fundamentally changed? Your cost of living is still exorbitant. Your utilities are out of control. You struggle every month to meet the bills. You don't see a future for your children. You don't see any new sectors created. You don't see any new jobs. So what exactly is going on here? We go to work every day. We wake up and we go through the cycle over and over. It's just a stagnant situation. There is no growth. There's no dynamism. There's no excitement in Dominica in terms of we're going somewhere. We're all just hanging on here, right? We're all just hanging on, and that's a real failure of leadership. And so that is the question. Are you better off today than you were off since Roosevelt came into government, essentially?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to say the same we said for the college to the bus owners and bus drivers. They had to come out and block the road, create some inconvenience for a number of persons, and we understood what they were doing it for. The Prime Minister came in, his statement was before that nobody should hold a gun to his head. What else he said? Nobody will hold a gun to his head and so on and so forth. And the bus drivers were able to bring him to his knees and created something to help. But it is not him. It is the resources of the state. Exactly. It's not him. He has to administer that responsibility in a prudent and responsible way. And the people who have situations and require support, yes, you discuss with them, you bring in the organization. What he does, he will bypass the organization. It's only crooks bathing, so crooks. No, I'm serious. I'm very serious. You bypass the situation, the organization, and you go to individual. So you divide and rule.
Right.
But and as Alvin made the point about intent, if you have good intention, then you want to always do the right thing. Because to me, I don't know for other people, but I like to know when I lie down in my bed at night, I feel I've done something good. I'm not saying great, I'm not perfect, but something good, and I'm peace with myself.
True.
So if you want to serve bus drivers and bus owners and so forth, you bring the organization together and discuss. And if it's $1 you can afford to give everybody $1.
Right.
But to pick and choose, You get $2, you get 3. You get 4, you get 5. It's only you get none. And I'm saying that it's only crooks that behave so. I'm not calling them
crooks and vagabonds.
Right, you add another thing to that and so forth. Because because I mean I believe you go into public life to do the right thing. And if you get swayed on the wrong stuff and you're being advised to get back there, you should quickly get back there.
Absolutely.
Quickly get back there and so on. So the bus drivers, you have to keep yourself in line. Keep yourself looking at things because you want things to better and so forth. And let us look at the airport. You had this big thing about airport signing. Now, just see how bad governance operates. Airport signing, big ceremony in the Roseau. Now you have the Prime Minister speaking, Minister Austri, Senior Minister Austri speaking. You have the Minister of Tourism speaking, the Palrep for Wesley in Roseau speaking, the Roseau Palrep in Roseau speaking.
Right.
Who else spoke? And you notice I missed something? The Minister of Communications and Works,
Right.
which is the ministry responsible for capital project on the island,
Right.
didn't say thank you. He didn't even have to say thank you. He probably shake a hand and he was present. But normally, the Minister of Works would speak. And then you don't have a big airport sign in rows with all of these speeches and all of this. Then what you do is you have this simple signing, because you see how signing takes place in America in many places. Right. When the Prime Minister and few people on your desk, the media takes some shots and the media thing and so forth. But the divide and rule tactics again. Crooked behavior. And then what happened there now, I mean, when the airport is constructed and you open the airport in Wesley, obviously member for Wesley will speak. So the member also will have to speak there.
Right.
And the various, like tourism minister, in what capacity does she speak? Only to say the only two persons in Dominica who can tell you about managerial management is Ian Scarry. That's what it says.
I mean, to make such a statement in the public forum as a minister, it shows the level of not just irresponsibility, but really incompetence in being politically diplomatic and professional in what you say in public.
Mm-hmm. And if I should add that piece there. Now, when you expect crunch time, the Prime Minister put his signature to the document.
Right.
As Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, we call me saying listen.
Right.
So she's signing now, and then you pick up what she signed, which is not his.
Right.
And you have it in the air. What showing is that? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, friends, what showing is that?
It's just pure theater. It's political theater. It's everything Skerritt does now. If you notice, it's theater. I mean, he's been coached and he's paid his consultants well to how to stage events, right? Mm-hmm. To stir the emotions of his supporters. Come dressed in red. It's Red Day. Flood the Roseau with red. What does that have to do? You made one of the most pivotal, transformational, potentially infrastructure projects in Dominica into a party event, into a Labour Party campaign event. I mean, what does that say about how soberly you approach the issue of governance, right? You need to maintain a certain soberness and a certain appearance that you are governing for the entire country, and to devolve such an important Dominican project into a party event is just irresponsible. And it shows you, again, as we said earlier, the current government really does not give a hoot about what we say or the public sentiments. The only thing it cares about is stirring up the emotional base of his base and maintaining that sort of fanatical loyalty. And as long as he has this, he will behave with disregard for many other institutions, processes, and organizations.
Yes. We have a call on the line. Let's take this caller. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Hello. Hello, good evening. Yes, good evening. Yes, good evening.
and you realize that we are weak and you can stay on our mind. For instance, I would like to ask a question if you know about that. Do you know if Sir Patrick John had health insurance?
No, I don't know.
That's one of my questions. As for how Kerry pretending now, this man didn't like Sir Patrick John, but he wants to be on top of the line talking about burials. He wants to talk about the because that's how he tried to portray himself. That's the moment he can use a Dominica. For my purposes, I would never allow the Dominica Labour Party to tell anything about to attend that level. God bless Dominica.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, so the caller says Kerry is playing on the minds and the motion of the country. I put the wrong switch on a while ago, so you must have heard somebody talking there. Not sure what that was, but I got it rectified. Yeah. So that's what we see. Now, Alvin, we said their mind is not there. But when it comes to do unpleasant things, let's take this other call. Hello, good evening. Hello. Hello, good evening. We're not hearing this call at all. Hello, good evening. Just have to call back. So I was saying that when it comes to get involved into what is not their business, they're active. They're very active and so forth. And to me, I've never seen that in Dominica. I mean, that kind of governance structure where you expect, for example, if a minister goes wrong, you feel the prime minister, who's the leader of the country, will take some action. We have seen all about the place. We have seen in St. Kitts where ministers have resigned. We have seen in Jamaica where ministers have been removed. I mean, recently in the UK, I mean, I think it was the health secretary that was seen on camera kissing his secretary.
That's correct. That's correct. It was removed.
It was removed because, I mean, he broke the protocol that was put in place to guide the public. So you in public kissing and the cotton tape, he was removed. So ministers leave if the prime minister is not, leading in a way that bring the kind of results for success that one expect. And the prime minister remove ministers if they're found to be, I mean, you look where it was in India, the same India we're trying to send Choksi to. I mean, recently they arrested a number of persons who were injecting salt water into people for vaccine. I don't know if you heard that part, Alvin.
I heard that. Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I heard that. Yes.
Fake vaccine. So you go to them, you pay your money, and they use salt water. Can you imagine?
That's right.
They want to salt you then. So that may even affect people who have pressure. And
right.
The pressure. And they were arrested. I saw some in Africa where the minister of, I think it was some minister, I don't remember if it was health, but some minister there, and other persons in the top medical, echelons of the government, they were involved in misappropriate of COVID money that came to them to fight the COVID, and fellows was taking their share. And when they were caught, they were arrested. That minister paid back the amount that he took. He paid it back, but he was still fired. That's how you run government. And then the prime minister, now he feels to appoint the police commissioner, to appoint the deputy, to appoint the elected president, you have to consult. And the prime minister of Dominica, this is the first prime minister of Dominica, and I've been following politics in the region for a long time. This is the first prime minister who feels consultation with those that matter is a phone call. And when he said to you, well, I'm going to appoint John Brown as that, then you must just say, thank you, sir, appoint him. Consultation, you use a phone to call to set up a meeting, a discussion, and you consult. Consultation is a two-way thing. It's not a one-way thing, a two-way. And therefore, when you consult in a very respectful manner, then you come up with a good result. But if you make a telephone call and you feel, well, I am just granting you a favor to tell you, who gave you that right?
Yeah, that's not consultation.
Yeah.
No, that's it. Certainly, that's not consultation. I mean, one could stretch it as far as they want to, but clearly that's not consultation. As I said earlier, there has to be a certain level of good intent and good faith for there to be that consultation. I'm just looking at the screen and I saw a couple of questions coming in, and one of the questions, yeah, I saw that, and one asked, what would the Freedom Party government look like? And as I said earlier, there are two issues at play there. One, the government feel they're callous and they're not accountable to anyone, and it starts at the top. Like you rightly pointed out, there are various countries and even right here within the region where ministers had to, they were held accountable and had to resign or asked to resign. And that is where the Chinese proverb says that a fish starts rotting from the head. So if the prime minister, the callousness and the lack of accountability starts with the prime minister, clearly the rest of his ministers and his cabinet feel that likewise they're not accountable to anyone. Mm-hmm. So I think to answer the question of the not the caller but the one who posed the question, we saw what kind of or what governance looked like on the Freedom Party for 15 years. Some of us may be a bit too young to recall. Some of us are old enough to recall. But clearly, the Freedom Party, during its term of office for 15 years, it cannot be said that that party didn't operate above board with a certain level of accountability, respect, and we saw it throughout. Prime Minister Charles, as she was referred to as the Iron Lady, the no-nonsense lady, ensured that the country had to run and govern in a manner that is accountable to the people. There was no ifs or buts about it. I mean, ministers, Bosso, when ministers travel, I worked, as I told you, in the audit department. Ministers were supposed to properly account for every dime they spent. And if a minister, for example, travels, and say, for example, he goes to Barbados, and he chose to stay with a friend or someone in Barbados, he cannot go and claim that per diem, and say, well, he traveled to Barbados, he entitled to per diem. We shall tell him, no, you can't get it. We're not paying it to you. So this thing is not to make money. The CBI, what is now referred to as the CBI program, help me, Bosso, that started under the Freedom Party.
As the economic citizenship program.
Economic citizenship program. Mm-hmm. And we saw the level of accountability that was there. So what we are seeing now is a gangster type operation, a callous type operation, a lack of accountability. And I'm saying to listeners tonight that those of us who are old enough saw what kind of government the Freedom Party government was. And I think the time comes back, the time is here for us to see that level of government in the country anymore. That divide and rule that is taking place now, dividing bus drivers and public officers and college workers, that divide and rule must end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I think that's what we would say repeatedly. We need to ensure that we have accountable institutions and organizations or systems, and that's all I'll say there. I mean, this is the constant thing. We just do not have the level of governance that we should. We're having a little technical difficulty, so give us a minute.
Freedom Party in government. And this is why today somebody was saying we should be teaching literature in school. I mean, if you ask a person, civics in school, if you ask a person who was Patrick John, I mean, they can hardly give you a good answer. I mean, some people, I mean, they call you for other ministers. In other words, we're a small country, and the trouble we're having is we're not able to kind of get our people to recognize who the officers are, who the leaders are in the society. Let us take this call and we'll come back and we get feedback. Hello, good evening. Yes? Yeah. Good, we're good.
But I still love your program and I'm always waiting for the first of the month to hear you guys' program. Thank you very much for calling. We always like to hear as well. And you know what your heart in Dominica while you out there, physically, but your heart is there. And so thank you for that. Keep it up. So don't take it home and abroad.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And you know what your heart in Dominica while you out there, physically, but your heart is there. So thank you for that. Keep it up. So don't take it home and abroad. Yeah, no.
Yes, we're having some difficulties, but hope that we have solved. So we're getting back on. Okay, so we have to say what it was. Okay, gentlemen, most in terms of loan order, I don't know what it was.
I suspect mute yourself.
Oh, I keep taking the wrong.
Yeah, mute it.
Oh no, I put it. The electoral system in Antigua or not. No, we have to bring in people here now and pay. So we've spent a long time and energy in something that we ourselves as a people understand and know we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have said clearly that this issue with electoral reform is just really a very misleading issue. I mean, all the activities that are being put in place to deal with electoral is a distraction. We know what needs to be done very quickly, and it simply is not happening. It tells you there's not a lot of technical capacity to do this. There's not a lack of capability or understanding of the issue. It's really a political issue that we need to address. And so the obstacles ahead of us in this electoral reform are political, and therefore they need to be solved, I would say, political, because waiting on the Labour Party government, the current administration to do the right thing, probably ill-informed. We cannot wait for the enemy, in the sense, the enemy, the political opponents, to make things easier for us. to depend on your adversaries to make life easier for you is a bad move. So what I think we have to do is change like Sun Tzu says, we have to change the terrain, fight battle on a different ground that you know well, ground that you control, ground that you're better at, rather than fight on the enemy's territory. So that's the sort of things that we need to be working on. We need to really find the problem. I think the way we need to really find the problem is to create electoral reform ourselves as a party, as an opposition, as a society. We need to ensure that there's a clear voters list and use technology and use knowledge on the ground and information on the ground to solve that problem ourselves. And then to use that list to make sure that there's an understanding in public of the implications of that list when that list is not being adhered to. And change the dynamic of the conversation, because as you have rightly said, this issue has dragged for years and years and years. It's a political issue. It's not a technical issue. It's not an organizational issue. So it will only be solved when we take charge of that process and drive effective electoral reform, although not put in place by the government in any formal sense, but in effect, we can drive electoral reform.
Yes. Alvin, are you here?
Yes, I'm hearing you now. For a while, I think the audio had gone mute, but I think I'm hearing you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. No, I share the views expressed by Bernard. I think this is a matter that's been with us for quite some time now, and what is saddening about the whole thing is that there are various islands in the region have undertaken some aspect of reform and implemented some of the basic requirements that we've been, struggling with for so long. So again, it brings me back to that fundamental question: the intent of this administration, starting with the Prime Minister, and that the fact that this government feel they can do what they want, as they want, how they want. I mean, we know the number of reports that have been published on electoral reform for Dominica. As recent as 2019, you had an esteemed group of persons who are involved in that, from the CARICOM, Commonwealth Secretariat, from CARICOM, from the OAS, and made some very fundamental recommendations. And rather than attempt to implement some of these recommendations, the Prime Minister on his own decided that he's going to appoint a one-man commission. That callous approach again, that question of no consultation. So clearly, the people now has to take the matter into their own hands and do what is necessary to bring it about. I think this is where Dominica is right now. We as a people have to take the course of action and do what is necessary to get certain things done. Otherwise, I mean, we're just going to repeatedly have one thing after another. It's going to be the state college today, the bus drivers tomorrow, the truckers the next day, airport another day, Fiscal Responsibility Act trying to pass. It's just going to be a culmination of different things. So I agree with Bernard and on the approach that needs to be adopted. Are you there, Bosso? Bosso, your mic is muted.
You hear me now?
Yes, your mic was muted. Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give a typical example. When the Prime Minister, there was a need for election for the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, the Prime Minister from Scotland, and rather than come in here and discuss and engage. So we as a country going forward with Scotland, he came for something that he discovered somebody that's only carried must get the praise. I understand that isn't carried. He consulted because Barbados had a candidate, and I think Jamaica had a candidate, not Antigua had a candidate. So CARICOM itself was divided on that because of his action. And reached a point where Baroness Scotland felt that she only had his support and not the support of the Dominican, because we would have liked to have Baroness Scotland, who is a Dominican, born Dominican, lived in England, educated in England, to, become Secretary Generals, rally behind her. But he created that division until she herself came here and tell us, those of us who are against Kerry must to say sell. You see, when you do things poorly, the result you get. So rather she come here and wish us well as a country to go forward in our democracy, or right to support or not to support the government or the opposition. That's our right. She gets so, if you like, upset and uneasy with those of us who have a different mindset, a different thinking. She tells us, Alice will say sell. But if the Prime Minister come to the country and consult opposition members, the country as a country, and not the Labour Party, the country, then we could rally behind a born Dominican who reached very high in British government, British politics. But he divide that because it must, if there is a praise to be given, it must be him. I mean, let's look at that and tell us how beneficial is that kind of leadership can be in terms of leading a country and providing, this good governance that one required to move the country to the benefit of every citizen.
Yes, absolutely. I think you've said it also. I think you've said it. This is absolutely the issue. We have to focus on getting those issues fixed. And I know we're short on time, so I think you've said it beautifully. So I'll just agree with the positions expressed here.
Yes, well, the time is already. It's already 10:02, and as you say, when things are getting even better, that's when the time is say to you, hey guy, you're wrong time, and so forth. But we just want to take the point that we have to discuss intelligently that we as a people can make an informed decision in our interests, and those of us who have to go forward for politics, for governance, for parliament, must put it with faith in the people, goodwill, not a money will. That if you pay me, I will run. I could be a freedom man yesterday, I will be tonight, or whatever, and you come and bring the bags. I hate it like paper bags.
For some reason.
For some reasons, you bring that, then here it comes. I am with you, I'm okay. It mustn't happen that way. It must happen that you are in it for the well reason. I'm not saying you can't get paid, because you want to get paid, and so forth. So Colin make a point about the number of ministers, and the party make the point earlier. Why do you want to squeeze the public officers and the rest of the country for your fiscal irresponsibility? A caller saying, so I say all of this, what would Dominica under Freedom Party government look like? Well, I make it point there on. Those of you who are in the 20s, even 40s, may not have seen the Freedom Party operation. But those of us who are older than that can testify that the Freedom Party has given good, loyal, honest, responsible government, and the country money is well accounted for. I call him the point about the audit report. I was in Parliament, and every year when the budget is presented, the Minister of Finance will have the copy of the audit report to lay on the table and becomes a public document. Anybody could have it to rules and to
Absolutely.
we have lost that. Okay? And Alvin, you made the point about the electoral commission, the
Integrity. The integrity in public office.
After Parliament, I was in Parliament, debated that.
Yeah.
I remember the president said in the debate, when you have a car, when you have a house, when you have anything like property, business, and you're in Parliament, you must know where you get it from.
Exactly.
Your legitimate salary. That's what he said in the debate. And all of a sudden now, it's like that has become an occupation for some people to earn a salary. They pay about $4,000 a member for you could only have one for the month. You get your $4,000. They charge you more. And some people sit there comfortably getting that and don't shake the boat.
Right.
Not even shaking the boat anymore, doing the right thing. Don't do the right thing. Yeah.
And absolutely, I asked the question of what would Dominica look like under the Freedom Party administration. I would say without hesitation, had the Freedom Party administration, the current team that planned to form the next government, had we been running this country would, I think, be transformed, because the amount of money that has come into this country should have been invested in productive capacity of this country to create many new sectors, many new innovative sectors. We would have looked at improving our agricultural infrastructure and transportation infrastructure, investing in young people coming up with a skills plan and a human capital development plan. And I think our GDP would probably be twice the level it is now, GDP per capita. I am fairly confident of that, and I believe that in the next 20 years, when the Freedom Party is in government, that will play out to fruition. I think we have to set big visions, grand visions. We have to say, in 30 years we'll be a first world nation. Others have done it, and if we don't get there, we will be very close. And we will have a unified nation, people to go pursue as a nation and to build ourselves as people, and independent people of color from the Caribbean. I think that vision, the realization of the vision, takes commitment and dedication and sacrifice from leadership to put themselves in the service of people and not themselves. And so that will be a radical departure from where we are today.
Yes. Well, Paul is saying to me that send a message in the everywhere saying no. It's echoing, so it seems we have some stuff we have to work on. We are developing a new platform here. So we're still in the tracking stage. But we'll get better as we go along. Yes. Okay, this last caller. Hello, good evening. Hello. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Yes, good evening.
And to give a brief example, he had they refer to it as signing of a contract with international airport. Biggest thing that ever happened. It's contract. All contract. And then later, when the journalist asked about the contract, he said it's not a contract. And that's one of the examples where we look carefully at and that is over and over again for so many examples but our time is preach the truth, and he does not keep us informed truthfully. No, he doesn't inform period. There's no transparency, and what there's no accountability. And he has now stop the opposition leader from creating a law. That's what I'm saying. And give this link for stopping the opposition in this law, which was very relevant. People say that there's a situation. People want to know if they want to get compensated, but don't work. And the opposition leader is a law and you have to compensate the people. And the people don't know how to read that law. Put the president because people think that they got
Yes. I saw myself. The answer in I understood the opposition here was they put a few questions to conduct in the last parliament, and they were not entertained. They were not accepted. What kind of parliament is that? And I can't believe that we can sit back as a country, not your people, bright people. I remember when Sir James came here in 2008 to address our convention. He said, he was agriculture, but he took his inspiration from because Dominica produced a number of PhD in agriculture, like Dr. Dr. Yankee left us, with beyond, Dr. Freegan, Robinson, guys. That people at CDB, that people in Trinidad and Tobago for the field booking. I remember being in the Bahamas many years ago. Dominican, I think he's with his brother. I don't know if his mother is still alive, but he was the head of survey in the Bahamas, so forth. And we just now 2021. We just feel that we owe it to scare. To just and even it's only cabinet. You have a cabinet to sit there. But I please don't say that minister, I don't say that he or she. That the being of the parliament, they never had a relevance to say ministers can want to in cabinet. I was in cabinet 10 years. But Johnson cabinet to a senator. He was invited to cabinet. He was to discuss parliament with the parliament. And Michelle was going to raise sales tax from 3% to 7%. And cabinet said to Charles, I don't see the reason why we should raise the sales tax. It's just what I extra around the country. And I see people have these and 2 cents pieces all around the place, almost the side that it's not useful. Just want that because when you compile it give you something. And he said, well, bring it forward in the budget. Against it. And when I oppose it, I will not give you a trouble to dismiss it from the parliament. To as if I were myself, to as a person of the appointment.
Right.
Yes, we discussed for and against those on the carbon side and those did not look at it. And so we came back, prepared for Parliament. Michelle said, I will draw my attention. So that's what
And that's
was. Yeah.
how
Yes, I see you smiling.
Well, that's oh yeah. I mean, that's the quality of leadership. That's what leadership is all about. Can you hear me? Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Once again, we have to be. Yes.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I think.
Yeah. You hear me now? No, I was saying, Bosso, that is the quality of leadership. That is what leadership is all about. Being able to come and arrive at some consensus, and even from Carbon's own perspective. Incidentally, May Solar Twins, Swanson Carbon, like myself, Alvin Knight, number of us, Charles Maynard, we were all members of what is called the Dominica JCs International. And there are three last tenets in our creed that says that government should be of laws rather than of men. And that is what I think Skerritt and his team, I'm not sure whether they have the gravitas to understand that government should be of laws rather than of men. And that clearly shows you what type of leader that Eugenia Charles was. So I'm not surprised at that. I mean, that is something which, those of us who knew her very well and who saw how she managed this country during a 3-term in government would attest to.
Yes. Alvin, well said. Well, we have to, in a while, call it quits, because it's 16 past 10. So, party leader, I don't know where we're going to go with election reform. I'm waiting to hear what Sir Byron is saying, what he's presenting. I hope it's not an opportunity to delay the whole thing and keep us back one more time is the praying for time. Just do the right thing for a change. And I mean, you've never been government for life. You've not been government. And I remember a quote from Norman Manley, the father of Michael Manley. They were both sisters. As a member of Parliament and head of government, he said, never pass laws in government that you cannot live by in your position.
True.
Because you cannot be in government for the rest of the world until death is departure. There will be some times I don't say, all these guys in government felt well. Even if you stay there, it comes to time, you see exactly what leaders in China, leaders in Korea, there for a long time. And when you're back, you have to go. So, I mean, there will be that time when there will be that close enough. Therefore, you want to live a legacy.
That's right. That's right.
But don't pretend when people would flexible to you about your behavior. So,
yes, absolutely. I think that's the point. I mean, I think as leaders, especially as political leaders, we have to build better institutions. We don't have to build better us as individuals, but we have to build better institutions as a legacy. And that means developing a maturity in our political systems, developing maturity in our electoral systems, developing maturity in our citizens, so that progressively political development occurs. Political development is a process. It's not automatic, it is not guaranteed. You can have political regression, which has happened over the last few decades here in Dominica. But as leaders, we have to ensure that we have to ensure that we have political progression and political maturity. And that's what we should aspire as leaders to leave as legacies, that we have better political institutions behind us than when we came. That means building better institutions, more responsible institutions, more impartial, more fair, transparent, good governance. Our task is to build institutional structures, to build capacity, is to make the country better able to govern towards beneficial goals and when we met it. And you can't do that by building yourself. You have to build institutions and structures and rules and values that survive you. And that's how you build institutions. And that's what the Freedom Party is about, building governance institutions that will leave the country better off when we ourselves take our departure from this arena.
Yes, well, let me Alvin, as we wind up, let me ask you to your
Yes.
ending word for tonight.
Yes, well, gentlemen, thanks for that opportunity to dialogue with
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I was saying thank you, gentlemen, party leader, and you, Bosso, chairman of the party, to that opportunity to dialogue with the many Dominicans and friends of Dominica out here listening, both in Dominica and outside. We got a work ahead of us. I know many of us Dominicans, no matter where we are, whether it's in Dominica, outside of Dominica, holds Dominica dear to our heart. We want to see a better Dominica. And even for those of us who may be away for no matter how long, Dominica is home. We all look forward at some point in our retirement, twilight years, to come back home. And we want to be able to ensure that that home is conducive, that country is conducive, it's welcoming, and not just for us, but for all citizens, for every Dominican. The pattern that's developing now and what we are seeing does not augur well. The governance of the country is not going in a manner that it should. So I would hope that those of us who understand, and as I said, who had that experience in the Freedom Party, will recognize that now is the time for us to roll our sleeves up and get to work and ensure that we can have the kind of governance that we all will be proud of as Dominicans.
Yes. Alvin, thank you very much, and very happy to have had you on tonight. I think the team was a solid team, party leader, as we thought.
Yes, I believe very long. Our time's up, but I think that's the ongoing mission of the Dominica Freedom Party, right? We believe that we need to find a dream that's realizable, that makes Dominica a more prosperous place, that makes Dominican citizens happier, to pursue the rebirth or the birth of a great Dominican nation. To work towards that is a noble thing. To believe that that's possible, and we all join hands together to make that happen. I believe it's possible. Many nations across the world have done it, and there is no reason why Dominica cannot be, emulating tigers, the Caribbean tiger, the first Caribbean tiger. Let's be the premier, most economically, socially, technologically progressive island in the Caribbean and a progressive nation on the face of the earth. We have to set those set of goals. We don't need to put along. We need to set ambitious goals that can harness the energy and the passions of Dominicans, and we go off and build a nation. But you need the right leadership to build that nation. And that's what we're offering the Dominican public as a viable alternative, as a necessary alternative, a crucially necessary alternative to the present government, if we are to realize the dream of building that shining city in the sea that we know is always been possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we end, we just want to again wish Chris Augustus well and a speedy recovery. We will continue to pray for that, and of course for the strength of his wife and family, and they could be there to provide the support that's needed, and that the doctors there should quickly and do the various tests once whatever issue and if you require further support for the movement, probably to neighboring islands, that could be done in quick time. So these things will not waste time on in quick time. We just again want to remind you season and do not let your guard down, be on the alert, and take the proper advice from the official from weather to advise those disturbing substances that may be in our area and affect us. Now for the COVID, we want to again tell you, remember we have to be vigilant and we have to continue to cooperate and to observe the protocol and to avoid what we're so happy has happened in some kids to not here in Dominica. We want to say to us as a people, we have to fight for good governance, to promote that in our country, good governance can make people live in a happy, peaceful, and united, and purposeful nation that will improve and forward them to cater for themselves and for their family. So remember, good governance is key, and that must be the symbol of power to bring change to our beautiful country. I want to wish the people of St. Lucia well as they are into election 26th of July. The United Workers' Party, the party of Prime Minister Alvin to wish them well. And we know it's going to be a tough campaign because we will have the big rally, motorcade of social distance, but it's going to be a tight thing, but it's keep Jamaica and places that have election people put out and voting. So again, thank you for listening. We appreciate that. We have so many of you bought this who online. We thank you and I can apologize for the mishappened we had earlier in terms of the organized system that we have here, but it was something we're working on. We'll get better at it as we go along. So those of you on Facebook, Freedom Party Facebook page, and those of you on YouTube, and also those of you on this platform here, this is where I remember the name of the platform. But that is StreamYard, yes. StreamYard, yes. So we can improve that. So the quality of the program can be listened to in many places. The audience can, as we continue to bring this news and information so that we can empower you with information so you can make informed choices. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good night rest. And we'll see you first Wednesday of August. Can you imagine how quickly the month is running?
Oh yeah, the year, not the month, but the year.
July. So again, thank you. God bless you. Have a good night. Rest. Alvin, thank you very much.
Take care, gentlemen. All the best. Thank you.
Next time we'll try our very best to do it for you in a very well organized and purposeful mission way. Thank you. God bless.
Take care. Bye.
It leaves studio to cut it off there.
Oh,
They still see.